Buddy, good morning, Mark. I'm not sure you were hearing us.
No, I could not.
Okay, very good. We're calling the meeting to order. And I believe everybody has had the minutes. Evelyn, did you receive the minutes?
Yes.
The draft minutes? Were there any corrections or additions to the minutes of our June 15th meeting?
I don't remember.
Then hearing none, can we just adopt these as our minutes so it can remove draft and they become permanent?
Works for me.
Okay, hearing no objections, we'll do that. And I didn't publish an agenda today, but I did distribute to Marie and Paul a draft of a table that I had hoped we could work on in this meeting. And then I recently sent it to Evelyn and Mark, and it was just a box representation of what our savings plan was, and it was a draft. Because I think if we publish our goals specifically, it'll be a document we can work on, and if we're not meeting them, adjust accordingly or add items. Are people aware of what I was talking about in that draft?
When did you send that, Bob?
About 5 minutes ago.
Oh, well, yeah.
Okay, well, maybe we can get Joy to,
No, I have it here. I didn't look at my email again after.
yeah, of course. No, I wasn't meant for that. I just want to use it in the meeting. Joy, are you still on?
I am here, Bob. I'm just
Yes,
outside,
I
so
don't know that I can post this to screen. If
Yep.
I send you a copy of it, would you be able to post it to screen so we can look at it together?
sure, I can do that.
Okay, let me do this. It'll just take me a moment to do.
And
Desktop.
no, really?
Okay, I used the building communication to you, Joy, to just send that attachment and just hit send. If you could post it to screen, then people haven't seen it could see it.
Okay, I'm just waiting for it to come through.
While that's going on, could I provide some updates?
Yes, please.
I've talked to some people since these have occurred and not others. So I had checked on the construction grant, the SAM construction grant that John McDonald had gotten for us, because I didn't have a deadline as to when that might be due. And I was surprised to be told that it's 2 years from when you signed the contract, and that our contract was signed on May 16th of last year. So that kind of rises in the queue as far as what needs to be done in order to get the construction projects completed in time for the funding, and puts the SAM actually before the library construction on the north wall. So the SAM is for the east wall. And also, pardon?
I was going to ask it because I know you mentioned this. Has there been any verification from other sources besides John McDonald's office that it's 2 years from signed contract?
I think that question is directed at you, Paul.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Has there been any other verification? outside of John McDonald's office, that the length of that project is from 2 years from signing.
You were
I
going,
don't have any. I didn't even know there was a deadline on it.
you were going to check with DASNY when the
Yeah,
last.
that I haven't done yet. But I will double check with DASNY, although we can get the project done. I mean, I don't think that's, any kind of a disaster. I think we have to get both of those projects done. Right now, we're facing a hazmat issue. We're going to have to get over that quickly and get construction going.
And what is the hazmat issue?
Asbestos,
Yes, but
Where?
in what area is it?
relatively small quantities. The black substance on the parapet wall, I believe a couple other places, but they're relatively small, but we've got to have it done unless we want to bid with that in place. But I'll check on that. Those details were sent to Kirsten, so he's aware of it and can give it a hand as well.
And I'm sure we'll be discussing it at our building committee meeting later in the week. Isn't it? Don't we have a building committee meeting later?
We
On
do,
Friday?
I believe.
Friday
Yeah.
at 4.
Yeah.
Friday 4.
So,
Hey,
in
Bob?
ac-
Did you email that form to me? Bob,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not following.
did you email the paper or the document to me so that
Yes,
I
I
can
did.
present it? Okay.
Well,
I'm
Joy
just-
is going to post it, so we'll all have it on the screen.
Yeah,
But
I'm
let's
just,
finish this topic before we do
Sure.
it.
I was just waiting for it. I just wanted to know if you had sent it via email.
Yeah, let's stay with the topic and then we'll all see it at one time. We'll get to it in the next thing. Marie,
So- I
what,
have some further on this, but maybe your
Pardon?
question is time. I have some further information on the SAM, but maybe your question is timely. Go ahead, Bob.
what is the amount of the construction grant or the monies that we have reserved for that project?
Well, for the SAM, the award is $125,000. And we need to contribute $7,000 for a project total of $132,000. One of the issues is that we have to lay out the cash and then submit the paid bills to DASNY, Dormitory Authority, to be reimbursed. So part of the further information that I have is that according to McDonald's office, who checks with DASNY, reimbursement should take 4 to 6 weeks. I have no idea whether that might be impacted by the current situation, whether they might take longer. But actually, I think it now makes sense if we do that project first, we can then move to the north wall, and we have that grant largely in hand. And while we await reimbursement from DASNY for the east wall, and can then use that to pay our contribution for the north wall. Sorry, I have trouble with northwest, south, whatever. And so it might even work out best, because for us to have $125,000 to lay out to pay the bills and then get reimbursed, that may not be possible if we had done the north wall first.
Just a suggestion for nomenclature, calling the one project the courtyard wall and the other the back wall or the parking lot wall, or calling it by the grant that's paying for it. So the SAM versus construction might make it a little clearer, because I understand the north, south, east, west confusion.
I'm
I
slow on
agree.
that, but it's it makes things very clear for me to be using which, north, south, east, west. I'm just slow
Yeah,
on
but-
making,
What,
also-
what has Kirsten been using in his discussions in the building? He's using the compass, east, north, what? Is the chair of the building committee using east, north, south?
Yeah, but
I
he's an
don't
architect.
know.
That is his mindset, maybe to use compass points. It's not everybody else's mindset to use compass points. It just
I
makes
didn't, I understand, but I had asked the question, does Kirsten use, or what do you use, Paul? What do you and Kirsten use when you communicate about these projects?
Well, we use the directions. It's the north wall and the east wall. Basically, those are the things that are used in the grant application. Those are the designations that are used, will be used for the bid documents. They're how we describe the project, basically.
Okay, then this is what I would suggest, Evelyn. I understand it might be easier to use different nomenclature. As I draft up these minutes, we'll use the compass nomenclature, but then I will ask you to edit the minutes before we distribute them and have a parenthetic so that we can be repetitious in how we refer to them. So it's easier. But I'd like to stay with the designation of north, south, east, west, if that's what we're using in the building committee, just for consistency. But I appreciate your desire to be understand it more quickly as we're discussing it, and I would like the same thing.
Okay, again, I have no problems with using the compass points, but I like that idea of parentheticals so we understand Northwell Courtyard.
Exactly.
It's east
Okay.
and
Yeah,
west,
that's
or vice
not,
versa.
that's a nice suggestion, and we're both accommodated.
No, it's your suggestion, and it's a good one.
So-
Joy, could you enable my screen, please? Screen sharing?
You should be able to. I can't do it on my side, I don't think.
Host disabled
Uh,
participant screen sharing.
Oh, hang on one second. Let me see. I can make you a host to see if you can do it. Bob, I still have not received that email,
Okay. That's
but I'll turn you into a
It was
host.
sent
Evan.
on, I just replied to your building committee. I used your thing to me and I attached it.
Yeah, I haven't received
Okay.
it.
If I get screen sharing, I can,
Yeah,
I can
That
locate
would
it
be good.
and share it.
I will do that right now. Okay.
All right. Somehow I've lost my screen. Oh, dear.
Marie, you are the host.
Okay,
There we
I'm
go.
trying to see to bring things up, but I'm not being successful.
Marie, it's at the center of the screen at the bottom of the browser window. Share screen, it's green.
I press that and it's giving me all sorts of options here that I don't, and I'm not
Well,
one of,
you want to choose a window, whatever window it is that you want to share.
okay, can you see?
There you, yep.
Okay, so currently we have 187,000 approximately in our designated construction account. Paul, is that just for the North Wall grant?
Yes,
So we haven't gotten the Lansingburg grant.
no,
Okay, and do they have a holdback of 10%? Is that correct?
yes.
In what they pay us? Okay, so we would expect 10% more. So I put the SAM grant first and then shown, I don't know, do you see my cursor when I move it?
Yes.
So then show the reimbursement of 197, about 198,000, which would then put us in a position to do the courtyard, north courtyard, leaving us with 84,000 after that. I would think the challenge, though, is to get it done in time. We haven't even bid it. Paul?
Yeah, that's the big challenge, and I'm gonna have to go full blast here. As I said, we're gonna have to take care of this hazmat issue. I just as soon roll that into the bidding process at this point and get those done, but I'll check with Kirsten and also with TAP and emphasize that we need to get this done because of the weather problem. You know, there's like 4 or 5 months where you can't do this kind of masonry work unless you set up all kinds of protection. So I will rush it along at this point.
Okay, I know that in the past you've expressed concern about your having the time to manage the project.
Well, yeah, there is a concern, there's a lot of concern right now about that. As a matter of fact, I only have till about 11 o'clock here today, and I've got to go check. We are reopening to the public today at the main library. We're going to be working this week on Lansingburg. There's a lot of work to do up there. So yeah, it's a time problem, but wouldn't be the first time.
So did I hear you reopening Lansingburg? It's what you said?
We're working towards that for about 2 weeks. If we're ready, I think we should proceed, but we've got to decide if we're ready at that point. Again, if you'll notice, you know, we're not advertising these reopenings until the last minute to give us the time to back off if we need to. But I'm looking at really trying to open Lansingburg for a very limited schedule in about 2 weeks.
Would that include the bookseller?
I would like to interrupt a moment. If I could interrupt a moment. As we're going from topic to topic, I found myself in the last task to do the minutes taking a long time because I was depending on the recording. And I was going to ask, and let me ask and interrupt now and then come back to this discussion. If you could help me with the minutes of the last discussion about the construction grants and the flow by doing those couple of paragraphs, Marie, it would greatly help me with the minutes. Would you accept that task?
Sure.
Okay, I appreciate that. Because I didn't follow each of them, and one of them, when we talked about, we didn't put an amount in. So if we could add that, it'd be great clarity and help us use the minutes better. Okay, I'm sorry, Paul, I interrupted you. You were talking about Lansingburg or responding to Marie's question.
Yeah, the last part of it, I don't think you heard. We haven't decided on the bookseller yet. Right now, we're just working on getting the branch open. I guess we'll have to make that decision as we go.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mainly brought up the construction grants because we had talked about it previously within the finance committee. And
oh, it was a very appropriate and important aspect of this meeting because we've talked about the construction grant in many grants in many different ways, but understanding what financial commitments we need to make and the timeliness of them will impact whether it's in or out of a savings plan. So I think it's most important to understand it well. That's why I asked if you don't mind doing that part of the minutes.
so, but I do expect that we're going to be discussing it further at the building committee on Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, from a financial perspective, and since we're talking about these grants, given the fact that our deadlines for the SAM grant is 5/15/2021, and the work can't be done in the winter time, and the public library, the North Wall grant, is 6/30/2021, and we have the same limitations. Shouldn't these be made absolutely high priority? Because we're looking, as I look at this right now, I'm seeing $452,000 and $452,500 at risk of us losing if we don't move quickly on these projects.
Plus offending the grantors. Do we,
Yeah.
you know, like our assemblyman who got the SAM grant for us,
Yeah,
so.
it's a lot of money.
um,
And
I,
if we don't perform in time, we would lose, you know, if we started the project and didn't finish in time, would we lose our money? And would we be responsible for paying the whole bill too, is another concern. So,
Paul, when do you think you'll get the response from DASNY, or check in with DASNY about whether or not that is the due date?
I, in the next few days.
and
Will
I
you
did, oh, sorry,
then will you then, as soon as you hear, and hopefully maybe well before Friday, let us all know?
I could, yes.
No, let us all know so we know what we're dealing with, please.
So I did ask McDonald's office whether the deadline could be extended. I'm not sure that that would work well for us in terms of, you know, the cash we have to lay out for these projects, but just to know whether there's an option, and she's supposed to get back to me on that, and I hope to have that by Friday for the committee meeting. The second update I wanted to provide is that I did talk with our deputy mayor about the opportunity, I guess, that exists for them to delay the deadline of tax payments. And her response was that that was not in the interest of the city, certainly, to do that. And she thought it required a local law, which would mean city council action. And she has not heard any anything about moving in that direction. So that's the other update that I have.
That's good news. Thank you very much. Wonderful.
Yeah, it is good news. Hopefully it'll stay that. But, you know, they are cutting budgets 10%. Doesn't, so,
Right.
but
Yeah,
the more, Go
yeah, the tax delay and the budget cut are two separate issues. The budget cut is, you know, anticipation of lower tax revenue, and the tax delay is cash flow. One has a potential impact of $300,000 plus to our bottom line, which is the delay, and that's great that if the city isn't doing that, but the 10% is still something we have to plan for.
yes. Thank you. That was a good summary, Mark.
That's an amazing summary. Thank you very much, Mark. To say that you're facile with the issues of committed dollars is certainly accurate. Now, do we want to go back to the draft of the plan and fill in that box? It's a little hard to read in screen sharing.
Is
I
it?
don't know if everybody can look at that and add to it or take away from it. Paul, I had sent it to you Sunday or so. Did you have any comments on it or recommendation?
I'm sorry, what?
The screen sharing document that's now up,
Oh, it is up?
well, I can see it on mine.
Yeah, we're looking at your spreadsheet, Marie. Your
Right.
construction projections.
Okay,
It's a
I'm
little
working.
hard to read, and if it were larger, I think it'd be easier to read. But I had sent that out to Paul and Marie on the weekend, and Marie and I said, well, we could work on this document together as a product of this meeting. That was my hope.
On this,
Paul, did you have any reaction to this document or additions or?
Oh, there it is. Okay. No, that's pretty much where we are, I think, with reductions.
Materials,
The
building.
total of,
Well, there is
Well-
the timesheet use issue is kind of connected to the Department of Labor Job Share Program. So I guess we have to kind of cover that issue.
Yep. I thought for the 10%, we were only going with the first, I'll call it the 3 legs of the stool, materials, the building repair, and security. And of course, Lansingburg maintenance is kind of like building repair, so. But we weren't going to, other issues, other possibilities until it got to the point that we needed to. Has timeshare issues been discussed with staff? Was it part of the department head meeting?
Oh,
We
yeah.
talked about it in the last finance committee meeting that he was going to move to timesheets.
He actually, if I recall correctly, he suggested it as a possibility, but it wasn't part of his 3-tier, the 3-rung plan at the 10% back in his director's report. It was just the first 3, and now he's added Lansingburg, or maybe that was part of it. But timeshare, he did discuss it, but he didn't say he was going to use it, but he was thinking about it.
That's right. We decided to investigate the Labor Department's timeshare program, which I have done.
Okay,
We have also, I assessed the fact that we would qualify for the job share program. And we did set it up so we are registered as an employer for the job share program.
okay.
However, there are some thoughts here. First of all, the savings for us are going to be relatively small at the moment. And a number of people who are part-time, who had their hours reduced, would not qualify for job share because they also have other jobs. Actually, almost all of our part-time people have other jobs.
Yeah, it's generally not used for part-time employees. It's generally used as a full-time employee program.
That's true, and that probably would work, differently for a full-time situation. So really, what the timesheet use line would do is, for the savings. I think it'd be disruptive in terms of the staff. It would be a morale problem, certainly. And I think we would also begin to lose more staff. That process may have already started. And that's going to impact our ability to reopen on a regular basis.
well, I had a question, and I may have not understood correctly, but in my mind, the timesheet use was a saving that you had speculated about, but that the timeshare Department of Labor program, share program, was a separate issue. That one was the way in which we reimburse particular persons, and the other was a program of a more comprehensive program. And
Yeah.
I didn't see them as connected, are they?
Yeah, in a way it's connected. What I set up originally, and of course we can do, make changes. But what I set up originally was to compensate people whose hours would be reduced. In other words, those people who really can't do a great deal of work from home. And generally, those are our part-time people. And so their hours, if we went strictly right now by when they're in the building actually working, would cut almost everybody in half. So the job share program would theoretically reimburse that other half to those people.
I had seen the job sharing program as a potential way to address the more severe scenarios if necessary that we were concerned about, rather than trying to be part of the 10% reduction in the budget for the second half of the year.
I agree. I thought that was the plan. That was the process we were going to use.
Yeah, basically, the job share program would work, and as Mark pointed out, probably work better in terms of full-time people.
Yeah, my experience with the jobs share program, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, because you looked into it, is that the idea behind it is you take two people who do essentially the same job and you split that job between two people and you reduce the amount of services that you're delivering. And what you're doing is they each work half time, but they get paid full time because the labor department makes up the difference in this hour. The problem with the job share program on a long-term basis is you will lose, my experience has been that we lose our best employees because people want to work. They want to feel like they're contributing. They don't like the volatility around job share program. And your most vital employees, typically the people that know the most, will seek work elsewhere because it's not the normal routine that they signed up for when they got in. So it is in my opinion, either a last resort choice or it's a very short-term choice if you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is similar to what we did at the Hart Kluwet Museum, where we were applying for a PPP grant and a PPP loan and another loan through the Small Business Administration that would, basically cover us for the rest of the year, but we needed some time, and that allowed us to be able to job share for about a month and a half, which is very different than doing something that's open-ended and your employees don't know, when it's going to end, because they don't. If I were in their position, I wouldn't want to be there. It seems like it could get worse.
I could also see it though as adding some flexibility. If someone is finding difficulty in returning full-time, perhaps the job share program could give them, accommodate them so they could continue to work at the library while addressing, maybe a child care issue or something like that. I mean, you have more familiarity with it, Mark, than I do, but.
Yeah, it's not designed for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we would, I don't think we could consciously use it that way because it's not what it's designed for. It's designed to keep employees financially whole when an organization needs to cut back money. That's what it's really designed for. And if you try to use it for things that it's not designed for, you could get yourself into trouble, would be my reaction to that. And I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, I think also there's sort of questions still in my mind. As I said, I went through the whole process and, we seemed to qualify. We were easily able to set ourselves up and so on. But what the questions I still have is what happens. See, every week an employee has to file for the reimbursement through unemployment. What is that process and what does the employee see and what are the various and the qualifications, that they're not mentioning to employers? I mean, I'd have to talk to somebody at Labor Department because I can't find those kinds of things, in their whole process. This is something that has to be done also online. And I think, I hear good things in terms of the reimbursement rate. But I still, have questions about the whole qualification thing.
Well, I think we've explored it. It's not something that I saw as addressing the 10% reduction that we feel the need to do, but it's more like a tool that we have as a possibility with our worst case scenario, which again, hopefully that won't occur, and I wouldn't expect it to occur until into the next year if it did. But I also want to mention that we would expect to have a really good feel for our tax revenues in a month and a half. So though we're trying to take these steps to address a 10% reduction, and I think we need to do that, we should have a lot better feel for whether we need to be concerned about the worst case scenarios in a relatively short period of time. Mark, do you have
I
any?
do have another update, if I could. So far, as of January 22nd, we've received $668,972 from the tax levy. If you measure that against last year at the same time, that revenue was $651,828. So right now, this puts us about, let's see, what was it? About 2.7% ahead of last year. We would have expected more like 5 to 6% by this time. So there is some slowness, but it's so far not a disaster. And as Marie pointed out, we're gonna have to wait till about mid-July before we get some of that data from Andy.
So Paul, how much did we receive this month?
We just got a check for 3,000 something, and I think that's the only thing for this month. Let me check my. Yeah, May was the 15,000. So yeah, about 3,456 plus another check for $345. But that's not unusual for this time of year.
Now, I would have to compare it to whatever percentage we were expecting. I know last month it was lower than what we had projected to receive. Okay, thanks for that update.
I have a question on this expense reduction and budgeting savings. What is the delinquent taxes $10,000 number?
It's a number we've used. I think if you, I'm going to have to explain this again.
Is this the receipt of delinquent taxes from previous tax years?
No, this is just a figure, and I didn't know what else to call it other than delinquent taxes that we've always budgeted since 2010 when we became a district. Most district libraries in the state are made whole by the entity that collects their taxes. The Troy Public Library is not. So that the actual budget that we vote upon in September is not turned over to the library during the year. What they turn over is they set up a tax rate and they turn over whatever they collect.
Yeah, I understand that.
So I needed a figure to estimate what they'd be turning over. And this is varied a great deal over the years. In 2010, I think we set it at 50,000. But you know, that's an estimate of, you know, what we may not see.
Oh, so this is a reduction, the $10,000.
Yeah, that's an expense.
That's an expense.
Yeah, that's in the expense side of the budget.
Gotcha. So you're taking you're taking the non-receipt of taxes and you're booking it on the expense side rather than on the revenue side.
Yes,
Gotcha.
So, and.
It's
when
a
I've been
debit
try-
instead of a credit.
When I tried to look at our budget reductions, I don't know quite what to do with it. I think the amount that's indicated there is not correct. I think 5,000 of that should be attributed to the first half of the 2020 budget. So I think only 5,000 would be appropriate.
Well, I think he's budgeting conservatively, so he's taking a bigger number, thinking we're going to get less money. Correct?
right, yes. Mhm.
But he's using it towards the 10% savings that we're talking about for the second half. And we've all, you know, so if it's 10,000 over the year, it's 10,000 in the 2020 budget. Then for the first half, that would be 5,000, and for the second half, it would be 5,000.
Paul, did you budget for this as part of the annual budget?
Yeah, that's part of the annual budget.
So
In other
this
words-
is an additional. This is additional to what's already budgeted for, Marie.
Yeah, in other words, when you look at the
No.
budget and the revenue side and you see revenue from taxes, that's the amount that was voted on by the residents in September.
Right.
So I needed a way to offset that because the city doesn't make us whole.
So in the budget that they voted for at the beginning of the year, is there a number in there for the taxes we're not going to receive?
10,000.
That's, wait a minute.
No, I understand my question. In the budget that was approved by the voters,
Yes,
is there a number in there for the taxes that you were budgeting for that we would not receive? Somewhere in that budget
Yes.
already?
well, yeah, that's in our budget, but the budget is not on the ballot.
Or the
Only
budget that
the-
we put in, the
Only
budget
the
that,
amount is on the ballot. So
So-
technically, they're not, you know, voting for a budget. We're saying,
I understand they're not seeing the full financials, but I'm saying in the net number that they vote on, is there money, is there a debit? Or since if we had a balance sheet, it would be a credit for the money that we did not receive, that we're not anticipate not receiving from the city for taxes?
There
It's
is,
part of that budget.
it's
Mark,
The
I'm
20
putting the budget up.
it's part of the overall budget, but it's not part of what we're asking for in tax revenue. So it's not part of what the city sets as a tax rate.
Yes. So what I'm saying, let me ask the question in a different way. This delinquent
Yes.
taxes number of $10,000, is that already in the budget, or is this at a $10,000 that you're adding additionally to what you've already budgeted for delinquent taxes?
Mark, can I slip in here? I just went to our website, pulled up the 2020 budget. At the very bottom, revenue adjustments, tax levy delinquency, $10,000.
So is this that same $10,000, or is this an additional $10,000?
No, there's just one $10,000, okay? And that's budgeted as an expense and reduces basically tax revenue is the effect.
So it's already in our budget, so we can't take
Yeah.
it here because we'd be taking it twice for one entry, correct?
Well, yeah, but he's just showing that this is, he's showing that this is a reduction so that it should be counted towards what our goal is here in this area is 10%. Because it is included already, yes, it's not a new 10,000, but it should be considered as part of the overall reductions in the budget.
So if we're, we need to cut 10% from a budget that already has $10,000 in delinquent taxes, and we're going to take $10,000 out in order to be able
My
to.
concern is, and my concern is the revenue from taxes. A lot of our other revenue is sort of in and out sort of things. You know, if we don't do it, we don't get the money, that kind of thing. But the biggest issue is tax revenue, and that's what I'm concerned with, and that's what I'm anticipating a reduction for. So I think.
No, I
that,
get that. But the overall, the 10%, we want to cut 10% from the second half of the year's budget. That's what we've kind of agreed that our target is. In that year's budget, there's already budgeted $10,000 for delinquents and taxes. So to cut 10% from half of the year's budget, you can't take that $10,000 because it's already in the budget.
No,
It's already
just a
accounted
matter-
for.
Just a matter of recognizing it as a reduction in tax revenue.
Yes, but it's already accounted for in the budget, so you can't take it out of, you can't, if we're trying to cut, say the budget's $1.3 million, we need to cut half of 130, which is $65,000. That $65,000 number already is that number already accounts for a $10,000.
I know, sorry.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, again,
But
what
it's
I'm
on the
doing is
expense
simply
side.
reminding people that it's in there as an expense. And so we're already anticipating almost a 1% reduction in that tax levy.
But we budgeted for it
Yeah,
already.
but I guess when I pointed it out, that's why I pointed it out. Actually, I did not include that in my plan, I don't think.
Yeah, and just getting to the
No, I wasn't-
56,307 number.
That I wasn't including in the plan that I,
Yeah, I didn't see it last week. To me, the number there, it doesn't belong there. I know that we've budgeted for it, and we're hoping, it's not a bigger number than that, but it can't be part of our budget reduction plan. And you didn't have it in your budget reduction plan last
No.
week. That's why I'm asking about that particular number. It seems odd to be there.
Well,
We're-
but
Let
Bob
me
got it
just
from
weigh in.
somewhere.
I just want to say why I put the 10,000 in. It was the recorded discussion of our last meeting. And we were including it in that discussion. That's why it's in there.
Yeah.
It does inflate the expenses. Again, in thinking about things, I have trouble knowing what to do with that 10,000 that's in there, but it does increase the expenses, so it needs to be thought of in some way.
Yeah, if we're budgeting savings of 10% over the overall budget, you can't, when you're budgeting those savings, you can take items out that are expenses, you can take things out that are income, but you can't count them in the same way that they're already counted. So for instance, this delinquents and taxes of $10,000 in our annual budget is already a reduction in the net of the budget. So we can't take the $10,000 out again, whether
Yeah, I
it's
guess-
for half a year or a full year. That's
I
all I'm
guess
saying.
again, it's just a matter of directing our thinking here in terms of basically the biggest problem, the biggest elephant in the room is, of course, tax revenue.
Yep.
There are years, as I said, it's varied a great deal over these last 10 years. There are years, or 1 or 2 years anyway, where we actually received more. So that the budgeted amount, delinquent taxes just didn't apply for that particular year. So this can go a couple different ways, and I just wanted to remind people that it is in the budget. And
Mhm.
that's my only.
Yes, gotcha.
Yeah.
Paul, I don't remember. Did you say you were going to share your cash flow analysis? Did I make that up?
I can, but people didn't think that was relevant. I guess.
Okay.
I can do that.
I just-
Um,
So maybe that's what you said, that you could do it, but nobody took you up on it.
Yeah, it, in the cash flow analysis, in other words, it just has each one of our accounts and that sort of thing, so people can see that. We're also sort of working on a balance sheet, but we have a lot of questions and I'm not able to meet directly with Joy, so we're kind of working that out. But the balance sheet too would also list all of your assets and that sort of thing. So if people want to see the cash flow documents, I can send those to board members or just finance committee members.
Any response?
That would be helpful in lieu of a balance sheet.
But that was my idea at the time, because like I said, there's numbers in that balance sheet that I don't know where they got those. But we're using, Peachtree's interpretation of the balance sheet, so. I will send that to at least finance committee members, and you can decide, if that's relevant or not.
Okay.
Thank you.
I know when
Thank you.
I've looked at it, I feel that if we do the 10% 10% reduction in expenses, that will be manageable, and it's not any worse than that we can manage to get through into next year, which is where I think it would really hit, around the February, March period. But I think that we could get through that time without a problem.
Yeah,
And
that's exactly what I use it for. That's one thing I use it for, is basically the way that we receive money from the tax levy, we have to make sure we can go from one check to the next.
And it
that's
is different than
basically
the
what
budget year.
cash flow document will do. It'll tell you exactly, whether you're okay or not.
So looking at this, though, it doesn't have the savings that we feel need to be accommodated, the 10%. I had proposed freezing material purchases, and we can certainly relook at some of this after we get the better data about the first week of August, and see whether we really needed to make the savings that we're trying to get for the second half. But I still would like to see a freeze on materials and on staff hiring. And if,
I would say there's sort of a tentative freeze at the moment on materials. We have kind of stopped ordering altogether.
good, thank you.
There is a problem with that, particularly as we reopen and people are not finding some of the newer material on the shelves or available. And you have to remember that other libraries, of course, we have access to other libraries, but when it comes to new materials, all the libraries reserve those for their own patrons first. So the wait time for books might go out to a very long time in our
Well,
case.
we're talking about something that hopefully could be temporary.
We hope.
We don't know. We'll be in a better position to judge beginning, when we actually hit the deadline for payment of taxes. But right now, we're trying to be judicious and allow for a 10% reduction in revenue. And that's total revenue. That's not just the tax revenue. So what I'm seeing here does not accommodate that. I think the most flexible way to get that is a freeze on materials, which would be about a $50,000 savings starting July 1st.
I think what Marie's also trying to say is we feel that we need to cut the budget by 10%, which is roughly $65,000. And we'd like to try to find a way to do it without dealing with without having to let anybody go furlough or anything like that. And so if you look at the budget and where the money is being spent, materials is the easiest thing to cut or freeze in order to be able to maintain staff. If we don't freeze materials, we're going to have to find some other place to get it, and the other big pot of money is salaries and benefits. And I think the board has expressed their interest in not touching salaries and benefits if it's at all possible.
Or at least minimizing the impact.
Yeah.
Because of concern about what could happen in the future. I know if we continue with our current budget and there is a reduction of 10% in the second half, we're going to hit a cash flow issue toward the beginning of the year. And that when we're getting close to the next tax payment. And we don't want to do that. We want to try to avoid that.
I think, though, Marie, too, we have never approached the city in terms of the schedule that they give us that first payment. We get that first payment on the third week of March. The taxes are collected at the end of January, and of course they have to process all of the taxes before they can issue the checks. But with the change in controllers, I think we have an opportunity to enter into discussions as to whether that can be speeded up as well.
I don't think they're going to pay us anything more than they have in hand. And I know, it may have been last year, I don't remember when it was. I was so concerned that they might not have gotten my tax check because they hadn't cashed it for a number of weeks. So,
Well, I think
Andy did offer to pay us differently, but it didn't sound like it would be particularly helpful to me. It was like it was in more installments or something. We can certainly look into that, but we need to plan. I mean, this is a rough estimate, this 10%. We need to plan to reduce the budget in the second half of the year to accommodate 10% less in revenue. And remember, it's not just the tax revenue. It's also the state funding we get, the help from the friends, the potentially the foundation's contributions to us, and other people's donations. So we can't just focus on the taxes. We have to be able to accommodate an overall 10% reduction as we've chosen to do.
And I too would so much rather sacrifice materials than staff. I mean, they're the true foundation, and if we don't have that, the library itself unravels.
Well, and both are services, but staff is the more delicate. I don't know if that's the right word, but
I think it's from my perspective as somebody who ran a business for many years, cutting expenses that are non-HR related, when you have in a position to be able to increase those expenses, it's very easy to do it quickly. And if there are things that you've deferred, it's pretty easy to undefer them. When you cut staff, it sends two messages. It sends a message to the people that you've cut that they're less valuable, and it sends a message to the people that you haven't cut that their jobs could be on the line, and we could ultimately end up losing important people to this organization that we all really care about. And the cost of replacing a lost employee is huge. And
Yes.
let's not underestimate that. Much more expensive than buying a book 6 months later. In fact, the book might be on sale, whereas the employee will not be.
And just, sorry.
That's it. So to me, you know, avoiding losing any staff is the preferred way to go, because we can buy books, we can buy electronic devices, we can buy whatever is in that materials budget at a later date and not suffer a financial consequence from it.
Mhm. And there, there's still even other, I'll just focus in on the financial consequences, not the more philosophical, broader consequences of losing staff. But if you lose staff members, some of the tasks they do that aren't just services to the public or are, in order to have them still in effect, do we have to go hire someone else to provide that, and at what cost? Try and also remember how difficult, the difficulties we heard about in obtaining staff. And I know the job market is, who knows what it's going to be at some point, but when we kept hearing it was so difficult to recruit individuals to come to our library. So that increases a known cost even more so. So it's like dominoes, the costs keep increasing. It's like ripple. It's going to get larger and larger and larger if this is the area. I said it, I think, to Marie, it's like a sweater. You start pulling at this and it unravels, and what unravels is actually the library and what it is.
Ceci, I agree with you, Evelyn. I think the selection of why we're after the 10%, one of the easier decisions was that it didn't have staff impact. And, but it commits us to need to come up with the $65,000 in this plan.
I also think part of the reason we chose the 10% is the city said that they were planning on 10%. And one of the things that I don't think we can lose sight of is the city, if it's 15%, can borrow, and we're not in that position. So if we act in the way that they're planning today, if we get into a position where that number is bigger, it will be easier to close that gap later than if we, avoid hitting the number that the city has already told us that they're planning for.
Right.
So Paul had said he had to leave at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
yeah, I've got to check out stuff here at the library. We're opening for the first time to allow patrons to come in the library, so it's kind of a big day.
Paul, then quickly before you leave, for this payroll plan, the DOL plan, where exactly are we in the process?
The what?
The job share.
Job share. He just
Oh, the
looked
job
it up.
share?
He just looked
where
it up.
exactly?
We have established an account as an employer with Department of Labor.
So is that considered we've made the application to do that?
Yeah, we completed the application,
Oh,
yes.
okay, that's what
We're
I wanted
set
to,
up.
It has been approved.
and we're approved, okay.
It's set up, yes.
All right,
Paul,
so
before you go, can I just ask a couple of things really quickly? These aren't things I need you to answer now. They're just things I'd like to see. At the buildings committee meeting on Friday, which I'm not a part of, if the discussion of the grants and accelerating those programs could be discussed in light of the financial impact of them, meaning the east wall being done first and the north wall being done second, as Marie had pointed out in her spreadsheet. I think that's important that we start talking about that from a standpoint of getting it done, because it appears we have a deadline. If we hear otherwise and we think that cash flow will allow us to do it elsewhere, we can, a different way, we can certainly change that. The next time we meet, it would be great if we could be looking at a number where we're hitting our $65,000 reduction, and hopefully without impacting HR in any way. That would be really wonderful.
Mark, you're welcome to come to the building committee meeting even though
I
you're
ha-
not?
You
I have
know,
another commitment on Friday and I can't, but otherwise I would be there.
I don't know if this is reassuring or not, but this is certainly not the first time we've been up against this kind of deadline. As a matter of fact, almost every construction grant, we're up against this kind of deadline, so we're kind of used to doing it. It will get done. It's just a matter of, putting in the effort at this point.
Well, that may be the case, but these are unpredictable times. We've
Well-
never been in times like this, so
Yeah,
I
we don't
there's,
need-
there
we
is
don't
Well,
even
there's just the two
another
things I would like
possibility here.
before you leave. Can we set the next meeting before you leave because you're critical to it? And
Well, Let
that's
me
one.
just say,
And
let me just say one thing.
the second question is, on the materials, we booked a savings of 32,075. In light of the discussion that just happened, are we changing that number or leaving it the same?
say what?
I think we need to look at getting to a number of $65,000.
Right,
That's what we need to get to, Bob. And we're not there yet.
exactly.
10%, I think, is more like 68,000
68.
for the second
Okay.
half.
Well, there was a lot of discussion about increasing the materials savings. And I didn't know if there was a consensus, so we just leave it as it is and visit it next time.
I think it's a desire, but Paul's the director and he knows what he can do. And I think, we've expressed that we would like to not touch HR if we can.
Right,
And I think, he's been through this before, and I think we have to look to him, for his way of being able to come back to us and tell us what's the best way to get to 65 so it has as minimal impact to the library, allows us to be able to provide services and keep the people that we really care about working at the library and make them be really proud and want to come to work at the library. I think those things are really important. But
well,
it's difficult when you're not running it and you don't have to go to work every day, figuring out what is the exact way to get to that number, in my opinion,
Right.
anyway.
I understand that, Mark, but the board has the fiduciary responsibility for the fiscal health of the library.
I agree. So we need to get to a $65,000 number.
yes, we do. Paul, is next.
And we as a board have to agree with it.
So not only do we need to finalize the second half budget, we also have to produce the 2021 budget proposal. We need to discuss that, have that ready for discussion at the July board meeting. So those are the two items that we need to finalize in time.
Okay, Paul, is next Tuesday at 10 convenient for you?
I have no idea. Wait a second. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Is Mark and Marie and Evelyn, are you good with this?
What, 10
Ne-
o'clock?
I'm
Next,
good.
next week at 10 on the 30th of June?
I think so. Looks good.
No, that's the last day before July 1st.
Yes, it is.
I
But it's
can,
after the building committee. The building committee isn't going to meet until Friday, so we could do Monday if you like.
no, well, whatever works for everybody else. I can do either.
I'm out of town on Monday, so I'd have to skip that meeting, but I can do Tuesday.
Okay, so let's do
Right.
Tuesday.
Then
That's still
we'll-
one day before July 1st, instituting the new budget, the revised budget, so.
And if we could, we might want to make it an hour and a half, just because it's
Yeah, I
probably
would
going to
think.
be an hour and a half. Okay,
Well, thank you
Alright,
for
well-
all the dedication, willingness to come to all these meetings.
I didn't understand what you said, Marie.
Oh, I was just thanking all the finance committee members for being willing to give up the time to participate in all these meetings.
Yes.
part of our
Very much
responsibility.
so. Much appreciated. All right, we'll see people Friday and Tuesday.
Okay, take care.
Yes?
Okay.
Okay,
Said,
thank you very
take care.
much. Yes. I'm sorry, I'm not, we're both talking. Did you want to continue to me? Would you like more to say anything, Mark?
No, I'm good.
Okay, then is
Anybody
it
else?
okay if we adjourn the meeting?
Evelyn,
Good.
Yes.
so everybody's comfortable ending the
Marie?
meeting?
Marie, you'll have, since you're the host, you'll have to stop the recording.
Oh, I get to do that. Wow.
Okay, yes, we can stop.
Um,
recording.
I see there's a number of staff on here. Do we want to ask whether anybody has anything to say or any questions for us? I'm not seeing anybody unmute. So I guess we're good.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Okay, we'll
Sure.
see- We'll see everybody Friday and Tuesday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Marie, do you
Okay.
need help with the,
I see a little stop button.
okay, awesome. Great.
I stopped it, I think.
Okay, it's showing it's still recording. Do you want to transfer the host back to me? It's the little,
Wait,
Box.
I think I found it.
okay.
It popped up a